right, cool. And looks like we're going here. All right, guys, what's going on? And welcome back to the Edison Club podcast. This week, have a couple of guests on here. We have Drew from my locals at Easy Gaming in Greensboro. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Drew. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Um, Hi, my name is Drew. I am one half of Drew and Ken Plays, which is me and my girlfriend's YouTube channel. We run our own Club Penguin game. And we also do card games and other video games like Animal Crossing, and we're going to do Rocket League and stuff. But yeah, we've been doing a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh lately, and I go to the same locals as Michael, and yeah, I'm just happy to be here.
All right, short, sweet, and to the point. I like it. We also have someone new that we just met last week. His name is Cody. Cody, go ahead and introduce yourself.
That's what's going on. I'm actually a Konami official judge. Been doing it since 2017. Just a little quick run back on how I got to judging and Edison. Basically, it's on the lines of I started playing a long time, and it got to the point where I was playing in the YCS 200th. I ended up having some heart problems during the tournament. I went to see a doctor, and I was having stress and panic anxiety. So I had to steer away from playing. So I went to judging. And after it was like missing playing for a while, someone recommended Edison, and I just play Edison now. That's pretty much all I do.
All right, awesome. Definitely a good choice. I can say that I think everyone in here is really enjoying the Edison scene, and it seems like it's growing all the time.
It's way better than modern right now.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we can agree to that.
Yeah.
So what is it that you have to start, like, what do you want to talk about that you got us all here for?
So tonight's topics, we're going to go over something that is widely discussed in Yu-Gi-Oh!, which is definitely covering the basics of side decking. And then if we have extra time, we can also talk about deck building, any kind of opinions that you have on maybe it's certain cards that you see are staples or certain cards that other players think are staples that you might not necessarily agree with. So we can kind of just branch off of those topics and start from there. So I guess the first question here would be, how do you make the best side deck you can for your deck?
It's honestly impossible to say, only because the fact that the one thing everyone should remember or know is that the format never changes. It's just a matter of the ideas that change. So you have all these limited decks that never get hit by a ban list, and you look at all these top decks, and it's like, well, Black Wings is meta, Diva Heroes is meta, Volcanic Quick Plants is popular, Glad Beast is probably like the underdog hated deck. Like, you look at all these decks, and you're thinking, well, what do I go with? And you just kind of pick something that's simple and basic that hits all of them at once. You should be good to go.
Yeah.
Like recently before I got to here, I looked at Carpat's video on side decking. He had a couple decent points, but nothing that was like good for or against. He was on the lines of citing Cyber Dragon, DD Crow, and Mind Crush, which I can agree to an extent for those three, but you don't want to like focus on all of those. It was mentioning on the lines of what will be the meta, what will be the staples, and what will be the most hated cards for the most difficult matchups. That's what he focused on mainly. So an example would be like for zombies, for me as a zombie player, my biggest threat is hero beats. So I put in 8 to 9 hero hated cards just because that's my most difficult matchup, and I still lose, but I just focus at least that idea on that, and then the other staples, the DD Crows, Cyber Dragons, Dust Tornadoes, Bottomless, Deep Prison, anything on the lines of those staples that are not being main, that are at least in the side, that's what I would go forward and focus on.
Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. Drew, as our resident fairy player, how's your side deck looking?
I side most of the same stuff everyone else sides, but the main matchup for me, there's two. It's Blackwing and Welladad that I have a bit of a tough time with. So I obviously have like Consecrated Lights and like Shadow Imprisoning Mirrors. But the one thing you really can't side for, I'm trying to figure out how to side for, is Lightsworn, because you're you don't want to side anti-Lightsworn cards because they just incidentally hit your deck as well. And yeah,
if you don't mind me, interfering really quickly, I don't mean to interrupt you. Like, what are you playing in? What are you like looking to fight against? Like, what do you think is like the biggest issue versus you?
Well, the main thing is if they can like. So I'm more of a control deck. Is if they can like, if I try to like control the game, get Christie out, and just shut the game down as fast as possible. So decks that are kind of fast paced, like Lightsworn, like if they drop JD, unless I have like Freed, I've just lost. And like, it's all really about like trying to like control and it's something. A lot of the time, you also are trying to set up your banish zones for a return for a different dimension. So, I mean, like I could play stuff like Soul Release, like that could mess with the people's graveyard and help my graveyard as well for that big play because like I win like 60% of my games off that card. That card should have never been legal. So, yeah.
Okay, all right.
That's fair.
Justin, you've been tearing it up lately with Hero Beat. What would you say are your strongest cards that you've been siding lately? Anything that really stands out? Any outs to Spirit Reaper in there?
No, I don't have an out. I usually just play it like 20 turns and hope that I draw Spark.
Yeah. Just don't read the first line of text on Gaia.
So the strength of my deck obviously is traps. So depending on the matchup, I'll just typically side out traps that are better for that matchup. And depending on the matchup too, there's some side like options that I'm looking into. I'll go ahead and give it away too because
you have nothing to lose and everything to gain.
Yeah, exactly. So like against the Frog matchup, there's sometimes where I do have difficulty just because like they put a body on board every turn, and where I play a relatively small monster count of 13, sometimes it's hard to get into those monsters and keep them on board. So like if I summon a monster and it doesn't stick because of Bottomless or Torrential or something like that, they recur that monster every turn. So I'm going to take in Super Poly into the side deck for that particular matchup, just because that can push for game and it gets rid of tribute fodder and it creates that blowout on my side of the field too. That just puts pressure on them. But as far as like siding out, like I know Boyd, we've talked about this. Like we don't want to side out any of our core engine pieces. So I'm going to keep all my heroes for the most part. If I did side out any heroes, there might be like I might swap out an Ocean for like a Wild Heart or something like that, depending on the matchup. Just because, like I said, I do have trouble getting monsters to stick, and I know Wild Heart seems like a meme, but I mean that card avoids Bottomless, it avoids Mirror Force, it avoids Deep Prison, and with Skyscraper it can get over almost any monster in the game. So I'm still looking at side deck options. My hardest matchup is probably either Black Wings, because like something in my deck that the strength of my deck is Royal Oppression and Skill Drain, and those are two cards that really don't affect Blackwing, especially the hybrid version or Value Turbo. So that's probably my hardest matchup. So of course I'm going to side in things like Shadow Imprisoning Mirror. I usually don't main deck Bottomless. That would be a matchup where I put Bottomless in. So that's what my side deck options look like right now. As far as playing against like Lightsworn and things like that, I think that Skill Drain and Royal Oppression do a fairly good job themselves. And of course, I'll slide in things like Starlight Road and stuff like that, obviously for people that are going to put in the back row hate. So what about you?
So for myself, I've been pretty committed to the Christia Sworn deck because it's very difficult now to go back to just regular Lightsworn. Like, let me just hope to draw some good cards off of Garoth. The power of like Orange Light and Christia and Soul of Purity is so high, but I have massively struggled with the side deck for this because the main deck is it's hard to change. Like, you side out Lightsworn monsters, then you're lowering your Lightsworn count. You side out fairies, you're lowering your fairy count. So I have reached out to a lot of people in the past few days with help for side decking for this deck, and I still feel like I'm very comfortable with the main deck in game one, but I almost feel like my entire game plan just crumbles games 2 and 3 because of my inexperience with side decking with the deck.
It's interesting that it's weird that you have that issue with the deck too. It's not really weird, but it's interesting because you play the only deck that can play on turn 0 or play on your opponent's turn per se in this format with Herald. And not a lot of players know how to play around that card. They don't take the time to play around that card. And more often than not, bad players will play right into the card knowing that you have it. So you do play one of the few decks that, or actually probably the only deck that can play on your opponent's turn. So to me, it's odd that you're having the difficulty with the side deck, because to me, I feel like your engine in itself is strong enough just to win games by itself,
Right.
Yeah, Herald's crazy, dude.
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, there could be points in the game where, if you really think about it, if you feel like you're hurting yourself more than helping side matchups, just don't side. Like, worst case scenario, you don't have anything for game 2. If you win game 1, like a swift, quick, easy win, you go to game 2 and you're like, well, I don't want to really give up anything. Like, if you really think about it, I'm okay with at least not siding going into game 2, because I want to at least know how deep did my opponent go to beat my matchup, because there'd be points where it's like, well, my deck's pretty pristine, so I don't need anything. Or worst case scenario, I'll throw in 1 to 2 just to fluctuate very slightly and keep it consistent. So as long as you keep it consistently wise, you should be okay. But I mean, I don't know what you're putting in and out of your matchups. So I mean, everyone's varies differently from experience. So
Yeah, mainly stuff like Outs to Light and Prisoning Mirror, stuff to kind of mitigate their side deck against mine. I did actually reach out to Hydro Pump a few days ago just to get his thoughts on it, and he brought up an interesting point. He said that a lot of times you really want to take out cards like the Plague Spreader, Beckoning Light, and Call the Haunted, because most people are going to put in Grave Hate. So it's good to take out cards that directly interact with the grave, since that's what most people are going to be side decking for, and it doesn't really hurt your engine because those are just supporting pieces.
there.
And if you have an issue with Light Imprisoning Mirror, I actually side a Breaker, the Magical Warrior, because it literally goes with that, and plus Breaker's just a good card.
Yeah, that's sick.
And for the dark decks, I do the opposite. I do Lila.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's fair. So, speaking on side deck topics, this is probably where the controversy for me, anyways. I hate Trap Dust Shoot. I feel like it's the most overrated, useless trap in the entire format. And my logic behind it is this. If I'm going to see a power one of that I want to see, I would much rather be a Future Fusion. I would much rather see something on the lines of a one of in my deck. I play Miracle Fusion or Brain Control or Heavy or MST or Return or Judgment. Like, I would much rather see something of those that will help me not only early game, but mid and late game, versus Trap Dust Shoot, which is very, very situational. Because if you resolve it turn 1, you resolve it turn 1. But if you have it mid to late game, you're going to be grinding to even get cards in your hand that it's just pretty much useless. Because if you have Gores in your deck, you're not going to set Trap Dust Shoot, and you're going to fill up your hand for them, or you're just going to set on it. Yeah, you can bluff it out, but you're not doing anything for it. It's just useless. It doesn't provide anything for you. So I feel like Trap Dust Shoot should actually be more looked at not really good than a staple.
Yeah, honestly, I agree with that. Like, there are very few times when I want to actually play that card in my deck. When we were building Justin's hero beat list for last week, we came down to one spot. And I was like, well, you might as well just play Dust Shoot, because if you do open it. But you're exactly right. Like, it's like the best card to open turn 1, going first, and then just the worst card in the entire game, literally every turn after that.
Like, it's not bad. I'm not dissing it for being a bad card. I'm never going to say that. But the issue that I have is that it doesn't work more than one thing. Like, yeah, you get knowledge of your opponent's hand because you could write down information in this format, which is great advantage. But at the same time, it's like, just play Mind Crush, because your opponent's going to be... Because you can play multiple Mind Crushes. your opponent's going to be playing e-call, or they're going to be playing something with Sprawl Frog that they added to their hand. You don't want them to have in their hand or in their deck. There's probably going to be some random spell and trap stuff that they'll somehow miraculously have in their hand. Or, funny enough, this happened maybe 6 months ago. I had Mind Crush in my sideboard. I put it in. My opponent was like so thrilled. He drew his like one of that he needed. It's like, yes, I have the out. And I was like, all right, Mind Crush, call. I think it was Book of Life, because I was playing against a zombie match. He's like, you suck. You hit the one card I needed to win this game. You did this to me. How did you know I was gonna get Book of like? You could just read off more than you think with just Mind Crush versus TDS. So
Yeah, I really like that, honestly. That's a card too. Whenever I just need another card in my side, it's like almost always being dedicated to Mind Crush.
so like Justin would probably be a perfect example in this situation, because Justin and I played twice last week. Justin, like, what did you have versus the zombie matchup? What did you have?
Like, what do you mean?
Like,
So, like-
you played against me round 3 and round the top 8, and you beat me both times. Like, what did you put in? Like, what was your thoughts on putting some cards in and out?
So, of course, roll oppression is good against your deck, but also keeping your monsters off the field with like combinations of Spark and Blast. I know that in our round 3 matchup, I saw Spark and Blast in the opening hand, and that right there in itself is 2 monsters off the field. Like, if I could stop you from synchro summoning, I feel like I can keep game on the board. And not to mention, like, Skyscraper was just MVP of the whole day. But really against your deck, like, oppression really hurts it, and I don't think you saw the back row removal when you needed to. So that's what it is. I just had really good hands against you. Just keeping Plague Spreader, keeping things like that off the field, your tuners, just so I could push for advantage.
Ironically enough, I did not actually see King Tiger Wangu. You brought in the second time. You just never played it, so that completely caught me by surprise. So that was a very, very good sideboard to put in versus the zombie matchup, which is huge.
Yeah, it was really good, but I don't know if I drew it for turn, or I don't remember. I don't think I drew it opening hand. But if I did, I felt maybe there were better plays. I think there was a moment where I had like a Miracle Fusion in hand, and I wanted to at least save a target for it. If that makes sense. So that way, like, I would have plays like a follow-up later on in the game.
Right.
Yeah, and
Can
we went
understand
back
that.
and forth on Fossil Dyna versus King Tiger for hours.
I mean, when in doubt, just go with your gut. So,
Yeah, that's what I've been saying too.
Well, on the side deck topic matchup, I mean, looking at some of these top lists that I've been seeing recently from the past events, from some Diva heroes to Frog heroes to Black Wings, meaning Thunder King, to some random Dragon Turbo versus Dragon basics with Totem Dragon, to Glad Beasts, to like Monarchs, to Frog Arcs, to like, there's so many different options, but just looking at all these, they all have similarities of Dust Tornado to Oppression to DD Crow to Vortex to Pulling the Rug. Like, it's just like, it really determines which setting you're going to. Because I know in the northern regions towards New York, when I went for a while, they were heavily focusing on the Monarch matchup with Pulling the Rug and Masker Restrict. And then I play in down here, which is more of the Black Wings. There's more side hate with Concentrated Lights and Shadow Mirrors and Bottomlesses. So it really just kind of matters not only the area, but just like the knowledge of what you think will be the most popular for that format.
I want to talk about Lightning Vortex for a bit. As someone who plays Edison and Plant, one of the key differences in the format is as Plant has Dark Hole, and like what people in Plant, they don't overextend as much as people do in Edison because there's no fear of Dark Hole. So that's why I was thinking of like I side Lightning Vortex, and I almost want to man it because like most people I play against, they just go full on through their entire play their entire hand out and they just lose to Lightning Vortex, and like, I don't know, people just be sleeping on that card just because of the discard.
Yeah, I mean, you got to run into some of those decks that will probably have Starlight Road, but if you really think about it, there's not a lot of decks that will have it. So having that Lightning Vortex in the sideboard is actually very crucial. I mean, some people play Book of Moon. Okay, you have Book of Moon, or if you have Stardust, I mean, you better have the Stardust. Like, it's very strict. And then on top of that, Lightning Vortex can be used very swiftly, very aggressively, or very conservatively, which is a very powerful side card to consider.
Lightning Vortex is how I lost to Hydro Pump.
It's a good card.
Yeah, I almost remain because it's just so good. Like, I like cards in Edison that discard, because a lot of you like get stuff like Malicious and Plague in the graveyard. And there's a card I've been looking at lately, Dark Core. I'm testing it. This card's like amazing for all their problems. Like JD gone, Christea. I think Christea has to specifically go to gray to be put back on top of deck. So
Yep.
Dark Core just banishes it, and like banishing, like unless they have Return for Different Dimension, like that card's on for like good. And I'm not like 100% saying play Dark Core, but I'm testing it a lot and finding a lot of results with it.
I saw someone
Yeah.
play that the other day, and at first I was like, is this like a meme? You know, like, what is happening? But then I thought
No,
about it, and I was
great.
like, this could actually be, like, kind of okay. Like, banishing, like, Goblin Zombies and banishing Stardust Dragon. So I could definitely see it.
Yeah, that's understandable.
I think that's something that I love the most about Edison format is people are still finding these tech cards like this and testing them out, and they're actually seeing some success while doing it.
I just love the fact that despite how limited this format is, there's still a lot of viable options. I mean, you're looking at some of the basic stuff that people just kind of throw together. I mean, my first deck playing Edison was just Absolute Zero, because that's what I remember growing up when I was younger. That was like the hottest thing. And then Glad Beast was the thing. And then Dark Arm was the thing. And I would never imagine like Volcanic Quick Draw and Welladad and Hero Frogs. Like, you would never just imagine years later, even like a decade later, that these,
KFC.
yeah, like that's another example. Like, you just never expect like these decks to pop up out of nowhere and not only destroy the meta, but like create new possible outcomes and possibilities that no one can ever even think of, which really just expands how crucial this format is.
Yeah, that's like when I first got into Edison format, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna build Jeff Jones Quick Draw Dandy deck. Like, it's the best deck. Obviously, it won the event, and I just got dumpstered every time I tried to play. I got absolutely dumpstered, and that was when I really just came to realize that the format was just so different from like the original Edison format.
Dude, I totally believe that, like, if I got a time machine and took the deck that I have now and went back to 2010 New Jersey, that I would be walking away with the prize card that day.
No
Unless
one
you-
would believe that your deck would do it.
Unless your
I think
opponent summons
honestly, I
Spirit
think
Reaper.
any of our decks, with the knowledge we have, would do it.
I mean, look at the guy who won with the Volcanic deck. Literally one Blaze Accelerator Reload, the trap card, one singular card comes out, and boom, the deck literally wins first place at entire YCS, and no one would ever expect that outcome from anyone.
That
Like,
YCS was insane. I was at that one.
that is huge.
Yeah.
Like, you just go to this event, it's like, what's this rogue deck coming out of here? Just Raigeki my board to death. Like, that's insane. Like, that was crucial.
I remember, like, I'm getting off topic here a little bit, but I'll go on a tangent here for a second. I remember being at YCS Charleston in 2015 and walking, it was like one of the later rounds, walking up to the top tables, and it's like Cleafort, Shadal, Burning Abyss, and I go to table 1, and I'm like, okay, what's this, like a BA mirror? And it was this guy playing Volcanics, and I was so shook that this guy was playing Volcanic and like just dumpstering people with Volcanic, and I was so happy when that guy won. He definitely deserved that.
Yeah.
I couldn't
That's
believe
fair.
it. I was like, this must be like a Shadal variant or something crazy, but no, my man just showed up with, he's like, I'm just going to be Axel today.
Well, since we're getting off topic a little bit, let's try to get back into it. So one thing I kind of noticed that certain cards for sideboard are kind of like situational. and then there's staples, and then there's forced. So if you kind of think about it, if for example, it would be KFC, new hot deck coming out. It's getting a lot of popularity. It's playing triple terraforming. It's playing a lot of power cards. And if you really kind of look at it, it's like, okay, what sideboard cards can it run? And one thing that stood out more for me and for Carpath and anyone who plays the deck is Zombie World. And it's kind of weird to say this, but just looking at it is like, it makes the most logical sense. You have it to stop any tribute summon deck. So any Monarch deck, you have it for anything that hits the graves. So this could hurt the Dragon deck because they have zombies now. They can't really do much with that. And then you look at just overall, it's an easy accessible card that you could play 4 of with 1 terraforming or 3 terraformings. Like, you just have an easy searchable out, which is crucial for sighting in this format.
It also stops the Cyber Dragon interaction on Gadgetron because it turns Gadgetron into a zombie, so they can't,
Yeah.
That's another good
contact
point.
enough.
That's a great example. I mean, you can play that in gadgets if you predict Cyber Dragon's gonna be like the biggest thing. You could preemptively, for whatever reason, have that's a Zombie World, and sure enough, they just lose to it if they don't have heavy or MST or Dust Tornado or anything on the lines of that. They just can't do anything. They got to hold off on that Cyber Dragon or just try to use it as a beatdown.
And it works really well too because a lot of times you'll see like the deck like that be playing terraforming already, so it's like kind of already part of their engine, which is really nice.
Agreed.
And then obviously the obvious being the zombie deck playing Zombie World just gets much better because now Doomkaiser Dragon is just insane.
Yeah, and then you have Revive King Hadass, which is just
The better zombie synchro. That's my hot take.
that's a fine hot take. Like, Doomkaiser is situational where it specifically has to have a zombie, and then you have Viking Hadass, which is literally just a Doc Bartol on its own. And if you play the zombie matchup already, which I luckily do, I can just run over something small with Zombie Master or Turtle or Gamazon, like anything in general. It negates everything. So I have 2 negates on board, which forces the opponent to play very cautiously.
And it looks nice in ulti.
It does.
Such a nice
Yeah, I have
ulti.
one. It's great. I wish it was first, but I don't care. All ultis look the best.
My hot take is secrets look better for me. I'm not against ultis. They're definitely number 2 on my list behind secrets and then ghost right after. But it's, I don't know. People just have their takes. But
Yeah.
is there any other side deck things that you guys wanted to discuss that we have on topic, or you want to skip to the next thing?
I think we'll close out just by saying when you do side deck, just side deck carefully. Don't take out anything that is crucial to your engine. Like a lot of times I was siding out Aaron, Lightsworn Monk, out of my deck because I was like, oh, this deck will never set anything. What I didn't realize was like a lot of times you need every name that you have, whether it be to set up Judgment Dragon, whether it be for Solar Recharge, etc., or just in the mid to late if your opponent is backed up, you're starting to gain control and they start setting. So I think that was definitely a mistake that I made, was siding out those engine cards.
That's fine. One thing I will mention before we close out entirely is, I don't know if you guys ever heard of smoke screening sides. I don't know if that's ever been something that ever came out.
Oh, yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's when you side in a whole new deck.
Yeah, that I ran into a few of those people doing that. It doesn't work because a perfect example is this. Someone, I think it was Simo, when he had his Prague video against Gage, he had Gravekeepers. He smoke screened an entire Flamvell core and completely destroyed because now, as to sake of the argument for this topic, you have a deck, you get destroyed, so they have all this stuff to preemptively side. So if we go into this format, they're going to have Shadow Mirrors, they're going to have MSTs, they're going to find some way to stop Gravekeepers. Then you just throw in this Flamvell deck, and now you have them really thinking like, great, now what do I do for game 3? You can't predict Gravekeepers, you can't predict Flamvell, so you have to rely on something that hits both. But if you don't, and if you hit the wrong thing in your side, you pretty much just lose, because then you're in a worse situation than you already were, because now you have an entirely dead deck with cards you can't use.
Yeah. Smoke screening is hilarious. I think there were a few decks back in the day that would side from like gadgets into Gladiator Beasts. I remember seeing that a few times too. I always thought that was hilarious.
All right. Well, going past that, you said what is the next topic you want to go on?
So the second topic is just general deck building outlines. Like, what do you need, in your own opinion? Like, when you're building a deck, every deck has like X number of cards that you know you're going to be playing. How do you think you come to those conclusions within your deck? Like, in it, let's take for example, when I was helping Justin with his deck, a card that you would see a lot in most people's main decks is like obviously Brain Control. It's one of the best cards in the format. But we kind of reached this conclusion for Hero Beat that the card pretty much did nothing other than just move a card out of the way for him because he has no tribute summons, no tuners, and so forth and so forth.
I'm just gonna say this. It's very situational. Like Brain Control is obviously a fantastic card to go off a example of. Like it's great because most decks that I'm looking at right now have mained, and then there's a very few select number of decks that actually have it in the side, and it's just one of those things where it's like worst case scenario, you have to run like the staple stuff, and some staple stuff that I'm looking at, depending on the deck, could be upstarts to heavy to MST to mind control, brain control, mirror force, torrential, solemn, trap dust shoot. Like you really just got to look at like maybe 8 to 10 cards minimum just in the side spell and trap side alone. Like you're just kind of to base it all around that.
Yeah. Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
So it really just like I don't know how you guys managed to pick your deck, and I kind of said this earlier that I just kind of picked off what I thought was cool from when younger, and now I'm just kind of looking back at it now. If you give me the option to pick from now versus what I picked back then, I probably would still pick towards the hero side just because it's something that always seemed like power. Like despite being like maybe an A tier to maybe in a B tier, depending on which variant you run, it's still like a super crazy deck that can have great OTK potential. It's just a matter of what you're running in, what matchups you're playing.
Yeah. I definitely, someone, I think it was Cody earlier, had mentioned the Volcanic Quick Draw deck, which is yet another newer Edison deck that really caught my attention because I think that variant of Quick Draw, it just gets so much more added to it by playing that engine. Like, I didn't realize just how strong a card like Blaze Accelerator in a format like this really can be.
Agreed. So let's on this topic. Would you consider yourself to try to stick with the traditional 20 monsters, 10 spell, 10 trap, or do you feel like you should steer towards a different count? Because obviously, depending on the build, like Lightsworn, which is more monster heavy, to Monarch, that's more monster heavy, to Hero Beat, that's more spell and trap heavy. Like, do you feel like that number's kind of changed and fluctuated it, or do you feel like it's still in that ballpark, or what are you thinking on that?
I think that, or go ahead, Justin. You've been quiet for a minute. You go ahead.
It's crazy you say that because we go back to like early Yu-Gi-Oh, like GOAT format. We'll go with the GOAT format, like GOAT format up to like something like Teledad or something like that. Yeah, you would have people like 20 monsters, 10 spells, 10 traps, something along those lines. Then you get into, and I think it stayed that way pretty much like through 2014, 2015, like Necros format. And then you get into modern Yu-Gi-Oh to where like probably 75% of the deck is monsters. I think now playing Edison, it's a good mixture of both of those. Like it's really whatever works for that particular deck. Like for me, I play 13 monsters, but really I play 17 monsters because I play 3 E-Call and Eroda on top of it too. I think the whole idea of like having 20 or having like an even amount of monsters versus spell and traps, I think the idea is dumb. It just happened to work out in past formats because, like let's say go format for example, right? Like there were 10 staple spell cards that every deck played that were the same. You had 10 staple trap cards that almost every deck played that was the same, and then a lot of decks are half the monsters they played were the same. In formats like that, it just happened to work out that way. Modern Yu-Gi-Oh, I don't think it's played like that.
I mean, look at it now. You have Runic. That's pretty much like
Oh yeah,
90% spells, and then
Yes.
you have
you have Sky Striker. Then you like let's go back and look at like decks like we'll go back to the one at the beginning of 2022, back in Prank Kids format. What was it called? It had like Illusion of Chaos in it, Magician Souls, like 75%. Yeah, base. Like 75% of the deck was just like monsters, and it's just to turbo your engine. That whole scenario of just having everything equal. I'm sorry, but like I'm not going to put in like another monster if there's just a better spell or trap card that's going to help me get to my engine pieces. I think that's just a dead, way to look at things.
another dead thing to look at is now that you kind of look at some of these decks, like I didn't really realize until you just said something, and I'm re-looking at these old lists. Like there's nothing past 42 to 43 cards at most for a deck count. You can never look at a deck that has more than maybe 44 because then it's inconsistent and it's bad and it's not good.
So
And then
like, my take on like the 40 card deck is like I still think they getting a deck as close to 40 as possible. Because to me, like, why would I put a 41st card in there if I can just like take that card out and have a better chance of seeing the card that I need? Like, okay, yeah, I can put like, okay, why would I play a deck with 41 cards and have 3 e-calls in it? Like,
or you look at Upstart, which is what people consider a 37 card deck with running 3 of them.
Yeah. So like Upstart to me, like I would rather play Yada, right? Like to me, like unless you're playing against Dragon Turbo with a really, really good hand, you're not going to lose your second turn, right? So playing 3 Upstart, we're still in a format to where 3,000 life points, even 2,000 life points can mean game, right? So I never want to give my opponent card advantage on top of them having life point advantage too. So to me, like if I really need the plus, if I really want to play a 37 card deck, then I'm going to play 3 Yada because it can respond to everything in the game. It can bluff your opponent out. And depending on the matchup, heck, you can even draw 2 cards.
Specifically against dragons with Yamada Dragon, that's a Gemini.
Yeah, I mean, Monarchs, really, they play Dark Dust Spirit, So,
another one.
Yeah, so to me, like, I think Upstart has its, like, you look at Modern Yu-Gi-Oh, right? Like, life points don't mean anything, right? So, yeah, if Upstart was a 3, everybody would be playing it. They'd be dumb not to. Patrick Coben played it for a reason because, when he played it, life points didn't mean anything either. We're still in a format where life points very dependent. You have monsters like Torius running around. You have cards like Brain Control. You have cards like Judgment Dragon. Why would I, play Upstart against a Lightstorm player and give them 3 opportunities to use Judgment Dragon?
Yeah.
So
let me comment right there too, because this is an interesting thing that Frazier talked about in his podcast, and this guy, his name is in the live chat, said for Edison, depending on the deck, life points can matter. Every deck in the format starts out at 8,000 life, except Lightsworn always starts out with 7,000, because your whole win con is gone once you hit 1,000.
So I've played against people where like they hit me for Upstart twice, right? And I'm at 10,000, they're at 8,000. Okay, so specifically Blackwing, they set a monster. I summon Shura, Special Bora, or normal Sirocco, Special Bora, pump Sirocco, like hit him for like 2,000, whatever, 2,500. At that point, I'm already 4,500 life points ahead of them. They're going to have to be significantly ahead in card advantage to win that game. So, like, to me, I'm not going to put my opponent in that winning scenario. That's why I think Yada is the better solution. And when I was talking to Boyd last week, it responds to everything. Have you stored my Yada? Okay, that's fine. Hit me with True Nade? Okay, that's fine. To me, I think that's a better option. But going back to the whole like 40 card deck thing, I think that especially too in Edison, where the format is slower, it's still not slow enough to where like the game's going to last so long that you're going to get to go through your 43, 44 cards. I still think 40 card deck is the best way to play the game. And I think that you can condense your engine down and the staples or whatever you want to call it in your deck to get to that 40 cards. And to me, it's just awkward having the 41 or 42 card.
I think that there are exceptions to it. Like, I don't really think so much in Edison format, but those of you that have been here since the beginning would know that this channel started out as primarily a Dark Magician based channel, and I think for that deck, I would never play under 45 because you just simply had so many cards you just don't want to draw. So obviously you're playing vanilla cards, you're playing Dark Magician Girl, you're playing Red Eyes Black Dragon. So I think that there are reasons to bend those rules, but you definitely have to have a good reason for it.
Well, so I guess going back to that too, thinking about it, in a deck like that, you want to see Red Eyes Fusion, right? Turn 1. So to me, if I put 45 cards in that deck, that's 5 more cards that I'm possibly going to draw instead of Red Eyes Fusion.
Yeah.
So I guess that's my mindset of it. You can get away with it in decks like probably Base, for example, where you have 4 or 5 different engines going, and you're guaranteed to draw into one of those engines. We're in a format to where you're not guaranteed to draw into an engine piece that you need. Every deck at Edison sucks. And I don't mean that it's not a fun format, but there are very few consistent decks in Edison because of the hits, because there's really no powerful synchro monsters yet in the game. So we're one set away from having broken decks. I think we all can agree on that, right?
Agreed.
So
Yeah, absolutely.
Shining Darkness, you have X-Saber that would probably be the best deck. You have Black Wings, which gets a little bit of support. I'm trying to think of what other deck. I know there's another one out there too.
And it scraps at some point.
Yeah,
came out
so
last year.
Frog FTK, right?
Fans can score and blow up.
Yeah, so you get Frog FTK too. So right there's 4 decks that are just overpowered. And when I say that Edison decks suck, I mean that there's a
Not
reason.
there. It's one set away. It's pre-ban listed. It wants to be there, but it can never be there.
That's why you can take one of 10 different decks and you can do well, right? Any deck can be any deck in Edison. You can't do that in Modern. You can't do that in GOAT necessarily. You can't do that in 2014, 2015 format. So I think that you have to play 40 cards because you want to see your engine pieces. You want to get advantage, upon your opponent. The only deck that I would think that anything over 40 would be even remotely playable is maybe some kind of zombie mashup. But then again, zombies, a lot of their cards are limited. You have Mizuki limited, you have Plague Spreader limited. Even then, I don't want to risk not seeing my one-ofs that I need, my powerful one-ofs. Maybe a deck like Dragon Turbo or something like that. But even then, if you draw a trade-in, you want to see a level 8 with it. If you draw a tuner, you want to see Cards of Confidence with it too, right? So I do think that 40 cards is the right way to go in Edison.
I gotcha. One deck that kind of stands out that's really weird, and it really didn't hit me until you said it, Yada, was KFC, where you can actually just run Yada and Jar and Reckless and Ups. You could just run all these draw cards because you play Karaz, and then you just chain those draw traps. And not only are you getting the +1 off the trap, but you're just getting another +1 off the Karaz. So you're already guaranteeing pluses, but that's the only consistently credible way I could think that it can work over 40.
Yeah, I really want to try out that KFC deck. I think that deck seems very insane.
I'm labbing it. It's great.
I'm not going to say it's definitely S tier. It could definitely be A tier for me. I would never classify it as the best deck, but it can definitely be one of those sneaky decks that you just don't have a side for, and you're like, oh, this is not good. I have nothing for this. You really have to put into thought on what you're going to have for it.
Is it
I'm surprised that more people don't play Karaz, it's not the best Monarch. Obviously Caius is, and maybe argumentatively, Ryza, but Karaz is such,
it's nuts.
To me, it's a game-breaking card.
It's weird for the single fact that it can hit any card with a draw, and the drawback is that your opponent draws, and it can't attack. So you really have to, how valuable can you get the value out of this from the draw or from not attacking? You really got to look into it.
I just thought of a funny scenario.
No, go ahead.
The thing with most Monarchs is that they can be a supplement. You can throw Caius and rise in every deck. Kuraz you need to build the deck around Kuraz, and that's why it's not generically playable. But when you build around Kuraz, it's just nuts because you can pop your own stuff and get value. You can pop your gear time. You can pop your opponent's stuff. They can draw, but is removal. That's why I think KFC is a good deck because it gets the most out of that card. Well, it's not the best deck, but it's a great deck, and I'm trying to throw some spicy stuff in there. Boyd sent me an idea, and I worked it in, and we'll see how that goes.
Yeah,
That's fine.
the broken idea. The idea I don't actually remember. I don't actually remember what it was. But yes, I'm sure it was great.
Okay, so it's Archlord Stay in KFC.
Oh, yeah, with the mausoleum.
Yes.
Yeah. So, like...
That's not bad. But you have to rely on the mausoleum, and you have to draw the Christia, which is basically unsearchable at this point. So that's where from deck building comes up, like, what power cards do you really want to see? So that's why I made the argument of Trap Dust Shoot being worse than more power cards, just for the fact that I would much rather see something that can get me started and set up versus something that slows my opponent down. Like, I would much rather be ahead to prevent it than just slowing them down to where it doesn't do anything, especially the very, very off chance that you missed a Trap Dust Shoot.
Yeah.
Like, if you do it against Hero Beat, or in this case, Justin. So if I manage to hit him, he's got like 2E calls, Future Fusion, Smashing Ground, Double Dust Tornado, some random spell and trap garbage. You just miss, and like, well, I lose.
Yeah, like, glad I got the knowledge of your hand. Now I know exactly how I'm going to get OTK'd this turn.
So,
yeah,
like, yeah, I'm not a fan of Trap Dust Shoot. Like, you can make the argument. I'm not a fan. That card's bad.
I'm sorry, but like,
I hate that card, honestly. For me, I never see that card turn one. Like, I never know, like, the feeling of how nice it is to flip a turn 1 Dust Shoot. I'm always out here trying to set up, like, a turn 26 Trap Dust Shoot against Glad Beast.
Cody, I will
Opposite
say,
for me, I always open the card. I don't know
Cody,
Yeah.
when we were playing in Top Cut, Cody, you drew 2 Malicious and a Caius, and I had Dust Shoot. And I think that's what set the stage for the rest of the game, is the fact that I sent back the Caius because
like you
of
saw
Dust
that
Shoot.
hand. But
Yeah.
so for the sake of the argument, let's say it's not Caius. Let's say it's another spell trap like Future Fusion. Now you just set me up. Like, you actually put yourself back more than putting me back. You just put me way ahead of the game.
Yeah. But how
Or-
often am I going to trap Dust Shoot someone with 2 Malicious in their hand, right?
It
So,
happens.
Like, you have to see Trap Dust Shoot for it to win you the game, right? I feel like, and if it was a 3-of, it would be the best trap in the game, but it's not. I think the argument is obviously you're going to take it out game 2 if you're going second, or game 3, whatever. I still think it's a good one of, like, now in GOAT format, when you have like a lot of draw cards like Graceful and Pot of Greed and things like that, then I still think playing it at 2 or 3 in that format's fine. But yeah, I can agree with you that, like, there are probably better trap cards out there.
Bruh, wait a minute.
like
Trap Dust Shoots at more than 1 in GOAT format?
But I'm
It's at
not.
3.
He said 3 and go.
Bruh.
Yeah, but
Bruh.
Yeah, I
didn't
think it
know
was like
that.
2007,
Reason 50 we don't like go for
2008.
it.
yeah,
Yeah, I think it was like 2007, 2008 that I got limited.
Right.
Another argument is mainly in plant format, and I get hit this by a lot, where I'm playing regular Tingu plant. My opening hand is like Double Thunder King, Tour Guide, Caius, BLS, and I just get hit that Trap Dust Shoot, and I'm like, okay, take your poison. And they're just looking at this and like, what do you pick? Like, you can't win in a stacked hand situation. Like, no matter how you look at it, you can't do it. You have Sangan set, well, you can't pick Thunder King. Well, you can't give them Tour Guide for the free Sangan. You can't pick BLS because that's an auto win. Like, you just can't do it. Like, what are you supposed to pick? You just pick your poison.
Yeah.
I still think the hand knowledge outvalue some of the drawbacks, because like in the games where I flip it, like even if it's like not terribly game turn, like the hand knowledge is just too good, and that's like why later down the line, like in other card games, like hand knowledge doesn't really matter. Like in Magic, like I've tried playing Magic with my brother, and there's so many cards that let you see their hand, and they just don't care. I'm like, why? Because when Yu-Gi-Oh, hand knowledge is crazy. Like even lately, like people were realizing, oh my god, a pointer of the Red Lotus is just broken. That's why it got limited. Like I just think hand knowledge in Yu-Gi-Oh, just like even if it takes a lot to go through, like that hand knowledge can sometimes like help you think like 5 turns ahead and like give you a better chance of winning.
I
So
will
that's
say-
why even if you don't like, I don't like maining. Like even if you don't want to main, I would at least side the card.
Sure.
Trap Dust Shoot is infinitely worse on Dueling Book because they're just going to draw the card you put back. I
Yeah.
think we
Right.
can, right?
I always
Yeah.
say like the dust shoot giveth and the dust shoot taketh away, because like you're
Agreed.
gonna win games because of it and you're gonna lose games because of it.
Yeah, and just to jump in on what Drew was saying about hand knowledge, I mean, if you really kind of look at it versus like back then versus now, the hand knowledge rulings are so different. And the prime example is the fact that you can write down information back then. Because nowadays, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but I can vouch for this, that if you, for whatever reason, mind crush me, you can't look at my hand. You just have to go with what I say. Or if you have a pointer and you actually do look at my hand, and 10 seconds later, because you good players have short term, they're like, wait, what was the cards in your hand? I can't tell you. That's your problem. You're supposed to remember. Like, they changed rulings and sneaky things to make it more fair. But I think the fact that people forget so easily, or they're so into an advanced game state to where they have to critically, like Sherlock Holmes think it, that you just can't keep all the valuable information in, especially for that one matchup. You're going to have to scrap it later on.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So we have about 10 minutes left before we wrap this thing up. Definitely something I wanted to mention in here is whether you're working to refine a deck that you've been playing, or whether you're trying to come up with a new strategy, I think it's always important to build around your deck's strengths while also keeping in mind your deck's weaknesses. So like a good example here is the Volcanic Quick Draw deck using Volcanic Shell to kind of be able to replenish itself from the multiple discards from stuff like Quick Draw, from Drill Warrior, stuff like that. So I think it's always good to just make sure that your deck that you're building, that it makes sense.
Now, staying on to the topic of what to put in, what would you classify as your staple side? What would you consider putting in for your 15?
I think for me, like, I think Cyber Dragon is definitely always in there. For the most part, like, there have been a lot of people cutting it, saying, like, the machine deck isn't that represented, or that the machine deck just respects it now. But I think Cyber Dragon's pretty much always in there. I think you can't go wrong with that. I think you can't go wrong with, like, DD Crow. Definitely can't go wrong with stuff like Dust Tornado, either in your main or your side. But just those generic cards that can come up against anything is kind of what I try to aim for. How about the rest of you?
I always have to have like, and no matter what format, I need like 2 to 3 back row cards. Like in this format, it's Dust Tornado, and Modern, it's like, what is it right now? Evenly, Lightning Storm. I don't know. It changes.
Yeah, and like
But,
Featherbuster.
Like, like I don't want it like, because I don't see where they don't play back row, and they come across against like a stun player, and they get blown out. I'm like I always try to like prepare for like every matchup, even if I can't. But like I'm trying to pick cards that can hit like everything. Like I was even like trying to figure out like, but I was thinking like, yo, Mask of Restrict hits Monarchs, but it could also stop Gemini Spark, and like that's not good. Like you're not citing that in for Hero Beat, but like I'm trying to think of like literally every single option of whether a card's good or not,
Yeah.
and that just helps my deck building.
I
But-
think that's just going to more of deck hate versus actual siding. I mean, everyone has their own preferences and opinions on it, but from what you're speaking of with Gemini Spark, I just feel like that's more of a side hate than anything.
No, I would never cite it. I pick a card and I see like what, and like all the possible interactions, even the bad ones, to see like how like hit every interaction. Like I don't specifically like have hate for Hero Beat. I was just saying like I want to have a card that like I went Dark Core earlier, where like it can hit so many different things and it's just like generically good.
That's fair.
Yeah. How about you, Justin? What would you say are your go-to side deck cards?
There's so many decks in the format that there are often times where I look through my side deck and I just don't side anything out because there's nothing that's going to be a blowout, right? Like I know against the Glad matchup, round 5 that I played, I think it was round 5. Like I just didn't have anything to side in, right? Because I'm not used to going against like spell or trap heavy decks myself or trap heavy decks myself. So outside of Heavy Storm, like even then, I don't want to side in Heavy Storm just to lose to Starlight Road, right? But I think that one card that's always going to be in my side deck, and even like I play Black Wings too, right? So Royal Oppression is a card that like is always going to be in my side, and it's always going to have application in the meta, no matter how many times this meta changes, right? It's always in the card pool. It's always good against the majority of the decks outside of these. Blackwing or Iceborne to an extent. So I think that card's always in my side. Now I will say that we've been talking about some spice for the PS5 tourney coming up. I'm not going to discuss it, but once that event's over with, I'll be glad to share what we came up with.
Yep, that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. Keep it secretive. I like
And
it.
it's nothing because it's nothing about the guys on the chat. It's I know that lately
There's nothing wrong with that. That's fine.
our following has gotten a little bit bigger, which is awesome. Plus I don't want to get ahead of myself because I still might change things before then.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's fine.
Royal Oppression, that's probably my number one side.
How about for you,
Okay.
Cody? You haven't commented on this yet, right?
I have not. My side throughout my entire playing career has always been very weird and questionable to where, like nowadays, if you asked me to pick from then versus now, I would never pick DD Crow. That would never be an option. I would try to stick more on roll decrees for trap heavies. I would try to focus on maybe Dust Tornado. I would never think of Twister. I don't see Cyber Dragons where I was growing up locally, so I would never consider Cyber Dragon. So if you asked me to put those cards in, I would say you're crazy. But now I would just probably look at Cyber Dragon, DD Crow. I don't even main Bottomless or Deep Prison in my zombie build, to be honest with you. I just don't have room.
Yeah.
So I just put that as more of a situational because if I go against KFC or an Ancient Gear deck, well, I'm definitely not putting a Deep Prison. I already know that's a dead card that would have game 1. Or if I don't have Bottomless against Black Wings, okay, I don't have Bottomless for Black Wings for game 1. That's fine. I'll still survive out of it, and then I'll just focus in on game 2. Like, there's so much versatile options to pick.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Okay, guys. Well, we're kind of winding down here. We've got about 2 minutes left, so hope that everyone enjoyed this week's episode. I know that I really enjoyed having Cody and Drew on, and we'll definitely have to have the both of them back again at some point. Always looking to invite guests, and I think I have to say, Cody, I think you've been my favorite so far. Nothing against you, Drew, but I'm just saying because like I just met Cody.
Nah, it is the first time I've done this, and like this with the deck building thing. Like I've actually never like told people how I build decks, so that's why I was trying to like figure out how I was going to enunciate it.
Right.
That's fine.
So that's what like it sounded like a bunch of like word soup, but like, I don't think I just do. That's how I thought in my life.
Like the way I see it, like for anyone who wants to get better at Edison or is picking up it, if you're picking up Edison, go for something that you think is cool.
Yeah.
Like the Heroes for me was like
for sure.
That's what I went for. I didn't go for like, oh, Rescue Cat was a great deck or Quick Draw is just so unique. Like I didn't go for that. I just went for something I thought was unique and cool, and I'm like, oh, okay, I summon a free 2500 Raigeki for free.
Yeah.
And now looking at it, if you're looking to at least change it up, there's no issue with copying deck online. There's nothing wrong with that. You can like people say like, oh, you're just copying this build, like you can't make up your own deck. Well, they say that a good author writes and a great author steals. So there's nothing wrong with stealing someone's online deck, changing it to your liking, and then you just go out there and it's your unique style, which is what I like about not just net decking, but people's personalities, because that dramatically changes to what you want.
Yeah, that was really good. I really like the way you said that. Okay, guys. Well, I guess we're going to be signing off here. I'm going to stick around for a few minutes. Had quite a few questions in the chat tonight. I'm going to go through and answer those. But does anybody have any closing statements?
I would just like to shout out me and my girlfriend's channel, Drew and Kim Play. You should totally go check it out.
What is it? What is it again? What's it called?
It's in the chat. I'm chatting there. Drew and Kim Play. Shameless plug.
Okay. I would love to say shout outs to my friend Sasha, who got first place in the round robin of that Saturday tournament we had, and then losing to Cameron's just like a god at this game. He's just ridiculously good. And Yi Chang, Adam, and Chris, they're the usual 5 people that I hang out with for Edison, and they are very, very good players. 2 of them, unfortunately, 1 didn't show up, 2 were okay. One bubbled. And Sasha, though, he actually helped me make a zombie deck. I couldn't even think of a deck. I was struggling back and forth between heroes and zombies and Lightsworn. Like, I just couldn't pick it. He's like, dude, just stick to zombies, play this one matchup 100 times or somewhere in the line of a high number and go. And sure enough, after just playing Sasha, because he was my worst matchup for like forever, he beats me. And now I played him with the zombie mirror. I finally figured it out, and now I've got a more fair shot than anybody to beat him.
Yeah. Justin, anything you'd like to say before we come to a close?
No, I'm good.
You good? Okay.
Yeah, I would like
Subscribe to
to ask
Edison
you
Club.
with the podcast name for us, though.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. Well, nevertheless, just really quickly, I'm going to be at the Richmond Regional tomorrow, and I'm going to be at I believe it's Greenville, the following Saturday after. So if you guys want to find me, you're more than welcome to find me judging those events. I don't mind helping with any type of questions from this meta or past formats. Like, just talk to me. I'll be more than willing to talk to you for hours if I am allowed to. But yeah, feel free to come over to some of the Konami events. It's still good to see people talk about old formats and stuff.
All right. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you on next week's episode of the Edison Club podcast.
Later.
Peace.
See ya. Okay, guys, so it's just me here now, just me by my lonesome self now. I want to scroll up and take about 5 minutes and go through and just answer a couple of these questions because we have 4 people on here. It's hard for them to all be able to get their individual times to speak and then also answer questions in the chat. So I'm going to stick around for about 5 minutes. If you have any questions for me directly, feel more than free to ask them, but I'm going to start. Apologize if I missed a question. I'm going to try to start with the first question, which is my friend Tony asking how do you play around Herald of Orange Light in Edison format when called by is not legal. You basically, you're not really going to ever play around Orange Light, but you have to make sure that what you're throwing to force the Orange Light is correct. So obviously, you don't want to summon Brionac and then pitch 4 to bounce your opponent's board and then get hit with Herald there because you just handed the game away. So basically, a smart play in that position would be to summon Brionac, pitch 1 card, return a card, pitch 1 card, return a card, pitch 1 card, return a card. So that way, if you get hit with Orange Light in that matchup, it's not quite as bad. You're not going like -5 into Orange Light. And then also, too, you only have like 2 decks that can play Orange Light. It's like Lightsworn Fairy and then like Pure Fairies. So it doesn't come up a lot, but you definitely need to know how to like get a good trade out of it. And sometimes they're just going to have too much advantage. And sometimes if you're playing like a mirror match, you're going to start Orange Lighting their Orange Light, which that really stinks. That's something I hate about the Christius Warren deck. But let's see. Yes, Lost Angel, I do like waffle fries. I think those are the best. Mayberry Picker in the chat is my friend Michael. All the best guys are named Michael. He says that you can read players' patterns. That's really smart as well. Let's see. Let me keep going here, and then I'll catch up to the newest comments. Traps that are good for Lightsworn. If you're just playing pure Lightsworn, it's like Beckoning Light. And a card I really like in Pure Lightsworn is Threatening Roar, because I really like how T-Roar lets you get the mills off the Lightsworns and then keep them for the following turn towards like Celestias and stuff like that. It's also like, I really like Chainable back row. So that's a card I always include in my main, my normal Lightsworn list, Pure Lightsworn. And then you can do like Bottomless Torrential Mirror Force. Some builds do that. It's pretty uncommon, but you do see that from time to time. Some people do throw in the Mirror Force. And I see here, Harm Virus, you said, thinking about playing 2 Bottomless or 2 Threatening Roar. I definitely would go on the Threatening Roar side of that 100%. And let's see where we're at. Hoban and 37 cards. Definitely 100% true there. And like I stated earlier, sometimes you don't want to... This is speaking more in terms of like not necessarily Edison, because I think most decks in Edison it's like 41-ish cards in the main deck. But like I mentioned earlier in this podcast, like Dark Magician as a deck in modern format, I would never play at 40 cards because I'm not trying to draw bricks. So I definitely recommend reading Patrick Hoban's Road of the King book, where he kind of talks about all this stuff. And he talks about how a deck like Infernity, if the deck count could be any number of cards you wanted. So anywhere from like 0 to 100, right? So like this is ignoring stuff like Exodia, whatever. This is just purely for a theory standpoint. Is like a deck like Infernity wouldn't want to just play 5 cards. You want to play more cards because that deck's engine is bigger. So 40 isn't always necessarily the right decision. You just need to go with what makes sense within your deck, which I think these guys on this podcast definitely did a good job of explaining that. So let's see. Once again, Harm Virus here. What do you think of 3 Hamster, 3 Celestia, and Lightsworn? I really like Super Nimble Mega Hamster. I think that it being 1800, bodying out cards like Shura while providing the Raikou for the follow-up into a Celestia is really good. I don't think I'd do 3 Celestia, especially if you're just doing pure Lightsworn. I think you just need 2. And if you're doing Christia Sworn, then obviously that 3rd slot becomes Shire Lightsworn Spirit, because every Lightsworn in the Christia Sworn deck mills. Let's see here. And then Drew just mentioned about how he was having a little bit of trouble putting stuff into words, talking about decks, that's completely fine. This podcast isn't scripted, so it's a lot of stuff on the fly. And then at the very bottom, we have Super John 0001. John Jones, the Lightsworn goat here. He says T-Roar, cough, cough. Definitely Team Threatening Roar, 100%. Yeah, he's got a couple other spicy techs I won't mention on here because those are his things. But definitely Harm Virus, I'd go with the Threatening Roar. I have seen so many games where like a Dragon Turbo deck just overextends and then gets hit with T-Roar and they're out of cards in their deck and they just lose. It's really good to wall out stuff like Gladiator Beast. Not letting them ever get a battle phase is really strong. And like I said, like the main purpose of that card is you want to keep your Lightsworns for the following turn. And they're all pretty small. Like Lila being 1700 falls underneath like the good threshold of the format, because like 1700, much like Dark Grepher, it's still like food for Shura, still food for Flammable Fire Dog, stuff like that. So I think that Threatening Roar really helps you kind of mitigate that. So I would pretty much always pick Threatening Roar. So I think I'm going to wind this down, guys. That's all the questions that have been asked in the chat. I think I managed to cover all of them. But we do this every Friday, most of the time, every Friday night at 9 o'clock. The past 2 weeks I've had some guests. So last week I had my friend Ty, 2IP336. Definitely head on over to his channel, give him a subscribe. Tonight we had Cody and Drew. So if you want to be a guest on the podcast, just shoot me a message. The Discord link is on my channel for the Edison Club Discord. We have a general chat, obviously, everything that normal Discord has. So if you ever want to be a guest on the podcast, you can definitely ask. Obviously we try not to use profanity or talk about anything crazy on here, but it's a fun time. I really enjoy doing it. I'm actually looking at starting just like a general life podcast that I'm probably just going to do it on Facebook, but I might decide to do it on here. I don't know if anybody would listen to a non-Yu-Gi-Oh related podcast on a Yu-Gi-Oh channel or not, but you never know. We want to talk about like just life and food and travel and movies and just whatever we want to talk about. That'll just be me and Justin doing that sometime in the next few months, just something for fun. So yeah, guys, so once again, thank you all for listening to the Edison Club podcast, and I will see you guys on the next one.